This is Jakob Ingebrigtsen, 22-year-old Norwegian running superstar. Over the last few years, he's catapulted himself from local legend to Olympic and world champion, and he's only just getting started. And this is me, Andrew Russell, 26-year-old British running enthusiast. Over the last few months, I've been living and working as a doctor in New Zealand. I've now catapulted myself into unemployment as my contract finished on the 16th of July, and I'm now embarking on a journey to become a full-time YouTuber. Last month, Jakob broke the 2-mile world record, clocking in at a time of 7 minutes and 54 seconds. Well, I'm 4 years older than him, and I've been running since before he could walk, so I thought that I'd give it a go. I set my watch to 2:27 per kilometre and waited for the next 7 minutes and 54 seconds to fly by. Here's how it went. Nowhere fucking near.
Really?
Yeah, this might be harder than I originally thought. Let's slow down for a minute and break down his record. 7 minutes, 54.1 seconds. For 2 miles. That means that he's averaging 3 minutes and 57 seconds per mile. That's under 4-minute miles for 2 miles. The 4-minute mile barrier was only broken for the first time in human history in 1954. And he's done it twice. In a row. Just to reiterate the point, he's doing a 100-metre sprint in 14.7 seconds. 32 times in a row. Can I even run 100 metres in that time?
3, 2, 1, go! Oh no, have you pulled your hamstring?
No, a little tweak. It's all good. World record pace.
Oh yeah, baby.
What was it? Okay, just about. Obviously he doesn't need to accelerate from standstill each time, but still, it's not giving me much leeway. If I'm going to get anywhere near his world record, I'm going to have to get inventive, find a way to level the playing fields. But I'll come back to that shortly. So, what am I trying to achieve with this video? Well, first of all, I'm hoping to get you to subscribe to my channel, please and thank you. But more importantly, I'm trying to put into context just how superhuman elite athletes like Jakob Ingebrigtsen truly are. That is, compared to pretty average runners like myself. Actually, I'm not being fair. I'm probably an above average runner. Last weekend, whilst travelling around New Zealand with my wife Lil, I ran the Christchurch Park Run and actually won it. Like actual first place, for the first time. This has never happened before. I mean, it was the newest of 4 park runs that you can actually do in and around the Christchurch area, and the time I won it with wasn't particularly fast. But still, if I'm finishing first out of a field of over 70 plus runners, all of whom run at least reasonably frequently, by definition that can't be average. But regardless of my own achievements, or non-achievements depending on your frame of reference, how can I best illustrate the huge gulf between even an above average running enthusiast like me and an Olympic and world champion? Well, I could run my own 2-mile effort, but what would that show us? I could probably roughly guess what time I get, just based off my own 5k PB. Sure, I might go slightly faster over the 2-mile versus the 5k distance, but what does it really matter if I'm 4.5 or 4 minutes slower than the world champion? We already know I'm not as fast as Jakob. He's the flipping world champion. So I came up with a different idea. What if I actually ran the 2-mile distance in the same time as him? Surely that's not possible. Or is it? What if I broke up the 2-mile distance into lots of mini segments that I had to run at his race pace? Well, how long would that take me? Including the rest time. And how many different segments would I have to break it up into? Well, this is starting to sound slightly more interesting. So that's what I did. 3, 2, 1, yep. So I ended up at North Canterbury's athletics track in Christchurch. I first envisaged just going to a gym and setting a treadmill at 24.4 kilometers per hour, Jakob's race pace, and just hopping on and off, stopping a stopwatch every time I needed to break up the segments. But it turns out that commercial gyms' treadmills don't go anywhere near that fast. I then thought about just running outside and setting my Apple Watch to Jakob's race pace and just stopping every time that I dropped below this. But I found that the distances that I was able to cover at that pace were actually so short that the Apple Watch's inbuilt GPS just wasn't accurate enough to actually record the data. Hence the running track. I haven't actually stepped on one of these since I was 16 and I won my house 1500 metres at Sports Day. Wow. That was 10 years ago. The The track meant that I would know exactly what distances I was covering in exactly how long. I decided that I'd break up this 2-mile distance into 200 metre segments. 16 of them to be exact, with the first segment being an extra 20 metres long to make a total of 2 miles or 3,220 metres. I'd give myself a minute rest in between each 200 metre segment. Yes, you could argue this is not a fair race. You could probably also argue that this isn't a race at all, considering that I'm effectively running a different event on a different date in a different country without Jakob's knowledge at all. But anyway, none of that matters. Jakob wasn't playing fair either. Who does he think he is, spending all those years training hard, getting 8 to 10 hours of sleep every night, and making all those personal sacrifices, whilst the rest of us were binging Netflix, drinking too much, and not training? Anyway, back to the race. So 400 metres in, and I'm feeling okay. I'm not used to sprint intervals, and I was quite surprised at how soon my hamstrings and my groins were on fire. Muscles that I don't usually feel working that hard when I'm running. But I've been doing a bit of CrossFit since being in New Zealand, and I'm used to the habit of HIIT training, so I thought that might have been an advantage, and I remain quietly confident. Lil, on the other hand, spent the rest periods explaining to me how I usually look quite graceful when I'm running, and that this didn't carry over onto the track at all. You can imagine how helpful I found that information mid-race. In the meantime, let's have a look at an average week of training for the world champion and see how it compares to my own. Total Running Productions has a great video explaining an average week for Jakob, which I've linked down below. And I'm not going to lie, his schedule is pretty professional looking. Not only is he running every day, but often twice a day, and he's throwing all sorts of fancy variations in, like hill sprint repeats or lactate threshold training. And his speeds are crazy fast. His average 10k pace is the equivalent to the pace that I ran my 5k PB in, and that's a slow easy run for him that he often does twice a day. It's pretty astounding. On the flip side, this is what an average week looks like for me at the moment. So as you can see, I'm moving most days, but half the training that I do isn't running specific. And when I am running, it's mainly for short distances at a leisurely pace, with the occasional long run thrown in when I have time. Like I said, an amateur running enthusiast. In this example week, I ran about 33 kilometres, or just over 20 miles. That's compared to Jakob's 120 to 140 kilometre week. Not only is that 4 times the distance that I'm running, but the intensity that he's covering those distances at is much greater than mine. This sort of training, compounded over many years, combined with excellent nutrition, an appropriate amount of rest, and not to mention outstanding genetic talent, equals Jakob Ingebrigtsen. I, on the other hand, am an amalgamation of inconsistent training, substandard rest and nutrition, and too many beers on the weekend. Whoa-hey. Average input equals average output. Elite input equals, well, this guy. So, how am I getting on? By this point, I was completely shot. I wasn't keeping track of my split times, I'd left that up to Lil. I was just fighting the winded and nauseous sensation that the lactic acid buildup had induced in me, while simultaneously praying that the hamstring that I felt go on the 100 metre sprint wasn't going to completely snap in half. I did start thinking throughout this challenge that I might have been better off wearing running spikes, considering that I wasn't really doing a 2-mile run, I was really doing 16 individual sprints. But the more I thought about it, I realised if I wasn't to beat Jakob, my footwear was likely to be well down the list of things I could feasibly blame it on. And here I am finishing the final 200 metres. That was horrible. Two miles all over and done with. Did I match or even beat Jakob's time of 7 minutes and 54 seconds? Absolutely not. 9 minutes and 10 seconds. 9 minutes and 10 seconds. That's over a minute slower than Jakob's time. Just think about that. An above average runner, a parkrun champion no less, can't get within a minute of his 2-mile time, even when it's broken down into 16 individual 200 metre sprints, with a minute rest in between each split. That's a total workout time of 24 minutes and 10 seconds. That is honestly astounding. I really thought that by breaking it down into these 200 metre segments, I'd actually have a chance at matching or even beating his time. Well, how naive I was. What could I have even done differently, apart from be significantly fitter than I am now? Should I have broken down the 2 miles into 32 100 metre sprints? Or even 64 50 metre sprints? Well, that would have meant doubling and then quadrupling the number of stop-starts and having to re-accelerate from standstill that many more times. And also, it just gets a bit silly after a point. I'd be getting further away and be less relatable to the 2-mile effort I was chasing in the first place. But that's just the thing. The ability of world champions like Jakob Ingebrigtsen is so far removed from what the average runner, or even slightly above average athlete like myself, are even capable of, that most of us can't really comprehend what they're actually doing, and certainly can't relate to it. At least, that's what I found myself thinking. I thought Jakob and I were competing in the same sport, the sport of running. But what I call running, he calls sprinting. The final lap of his 2-mile record, he did it in 56 seconds. That's crazy. I even tried a 400-metre lap of my own that day, just to see if it was possible. Before the 2-mile effort, fully warmed up. I'd done a load of strides and everything. I urge you guys to have a go and see if you can do that. Let me know in the comments how you get on, because I certainly couldn't match it. I managed 58 seconds, completely fresh, and I didn't run that lap. I sprinted that lap. Like I said, he isn't running. At least, not what I understand as running. And the most scary thing, he's only 22. And theoretically, his prime is still yet to come. But anyway, that's all for today. If you liked the video and want to see more like this, please drop it a like and consider subscribing to my channel, and I'll see you again next time.